Hello and welcome to another episode of Earth911's Sustainability in Your Ear. I'm Mitch Ratcliffe, and we're back with another innovator interview. We're going to be talking with Jake Felser, who's the Chief Technology Officer at Freight Farms. Now, growing and distributing vegetables locally is one of the most effective ways for us to lower our society's carbon footprint. While agriculture contributes about 10% of the U.S. greenhouse gas emissions each year, the majority of that comes from raising animals. Raising vegetables is extremely earth-friendly. And by increasing our consumption of locally grown vegetables, we can improve local health, reduce overall emissions from transportation, and possibly start to reduce our load on the atmosphere. And as many of us know from recent weeks in the West, things are getting warmer. We have an extreme drought in the West and more storms in the Southeast every year that reflect the fact that the Earth is being warmed up by our activity. Now, Freight Farms has an answer in shipping containers that are built into highly efficient hydroponic farms using LED lighting that can deliver fresh produce year-round. They call it the complete farming system in a box. It's a very big box. It's a shipping container, and it includes climate controls, lighting, and monitoring systems to make farming easy for anyone to do. Freight Farms has more than 350 farm customers in 49 states and 32 countries at this time. And the company says most of its customers are new to agriculture and operate right in the urban and rural communities that they serve. So let's talk with Jake about what the Boston-based company is doing with container agriculture systems. Welcome to the show, Jake. How are you today?
I'm really great. Thanks for having me, Mitch.
Well, first, I want everybody to check you guys out at freightfarms.com. How did the company get started? Were you looking for something to do with shipping containers, or were you thinking about farming when you first conceived the idea?
Yeah, so the company's been around for about 10 years now, and it was founded in 2010 by our founders, Brad and John. They were originally inspired by agriculture that was happening on roofs in urban areas. And what they found was that it's actually very expensive to set up a rooftop garden in most places, right? You have to get space on a roof, which is not necessarily obvious how to do. If you are not on a roof, you have to get a substantial amount of land to actually be profitable as a greenhouse or hydroponic farmer. And they were inspired to make a system that was as turnkey as possible. And using existing infrastructure that was out there, one of the logical places they looked became shipping containers. And so the idea of the farm inside the shipping container was born. We started shipping farms in 2011, 2012. And now, 10 years later, we're about 10 generations of farm in. The technology has come a very long way in those 10 years. And our customers have come a very long way in those 10 years as well. But the core mission remains the same, which is let's make agriculture accessible for everyone.
Now, tell us what's inside the container system.
Absolutely. So the container includes a high-density, high-performance hydroponic farm. And what Freight Farms does, our farms are a subset of what's called controlled environment agriculture, which means we're controlling the light, the air, and the nutrients and water that the plants are receiving. And so that construct basically breaks down the technology inside the farm. We have an environmental control system that manages air temperature and humidity to always create sort of that perfect day outside. We've got a high-performance, high-efficiency LED array that is spectrally optimized for the plants. That recreates the sun in an efficient manner. And then we have a water system that does active nutrient buffering and nutrient injection to keep the plants healthy and happy.
So the vertical farm components are in the center of the container, and then the lights are on the side. And the worker can walk around the farm essentially at the edge of the container. Is that the physical experience inside?
Yeah, so inside there are basically two areas. There's the cultivation area, which is what you're talking about, the main area that has all those plant sites vertically arranged. There are actually 3 walls of LEDs. There's one on each side and then one right in the center.
Oh, okay.
And then there's 2 grow walls, each one sandwiched between the 2 LED walls. And those are all movable. So there's a rack and pinion system. You can twirl a dial on the front and it moves over, and then you can walk between the rows.
Oh, for ease of access. Okay. I was trying to figure out how you would get around in there. So you actually have things moving so that you can get to different parts of the farm. That's really fascinating. Okay.
Exactly. Yeah. For growing, you want the lights about 18 inches from the surface of the plant. So that's a little bit tight for most people.
Okay. Now, for a 13,000 plant system, what does this cost? And is everything included?
So the farm itself is a complete plug and play turnkey system. There's a little bit of assembly you have to do when you get it, but it's IKEA level. And it costs $139,000 for the farm itself. So depending on where you put it, you are responsible for your foundation or your lot, wherever that may be.
Sure.
And then in addition, you have to buy some consumables. So we offer kits and subscription packages so you are getting exactly what you need for your farm, and that helps you minimize costs. And then we have the software layer on top, which is the subscription. In addition to that, we give you free lifetime support for both your farm equipment and the software, of course, but we also do provide a lot of support around business planning and provide suggestions on packaging and just the different pieces that people actually need to run a farming business, not just operate a farm.
So the subscription product, and you have an app called Farmhand that helps the operator manage and maintain the installation. It comes with an annual license of $2,400, and I was trying to understand the relationship of that fee to the farm. Is that for just one container, or is that something that would be extensible, and so you could add 4 more containers but still use the same app subscription?
So you can absolutely extend it. You can run multiple farms sort of within an organization within Farmhand. Okay. There is a nominal charge for per extra farm, but it's much less than the $2,400 base subscription price. And yeah, we absolutely want people to scale. So everything in the software is designed to enable you to run multiple farms and to grow your business so that it's not just you running the farms, but you can support other people working for you. And they can have different permissions. You might have someone who just works in one of the farms, for instance, and the software supports that.
Okay. So, and how many people does it take to manage a farm on an ongoing basis?
Generally just one. Depending on your experience level and what you're growing, it can be anywhere from 10 to 20 hours a week to run one farm. And that 10 to 20 hours will get you about 1,000 heads of lettuce per week. So it's actually not even a full-time job to run one farm, which is why in a lot of cases we do see people trying to get to that 2 or 3 farm mark where it becomes your full-time job.
And so how much produce, you mentioned 1,000 heads of lettuce a week, so 52,000 heads of lettuce a year. How much, and of course different crops would have different capacities, but roughly speaking, how much in economic value do you estimate a farm can produce annually?
Absolutely. So it depends a lot on where you are because produce prices can change dramatically. But our general rule of thumb is about $2 to $3 per head of lettuce. Mm-hmm. So we use lettuce as a baseline. We have a lot of test data in lettuce, and a lot of our farmers do grow lettuce because it's one of the most profitable things to grow in the farm. So just extrapolating there, you can get, if you're selling selling everything you grow, you can get about $100,000 to $150,000 of revenue per year.
Okay, so more than the cost, even in the first year. Of course, there are other costs, but that's fascinating. Now, this is a system that can be put into an urban area or into a rural area. How do you find people are making the decision to invest in a freight farm system compared to other approaches to urban agriculture? Do they recognize the fact that these are compact and more sustainable than, for instance, trying to rebuild a building in order to take the roof off and let more sunlight in?
Of course, yeah. So there's a variety of ways that people are drawn to our farms. And I think there's some places where controlled environment agriculture and specifically container farming really sing. Mm-hmm. One of those is if you are very limited in space. So if you need to make a profit in a small space, vertical farming and container farming is really great option for you. So we have a lot of customers who are urban, but that is definitely not our full footprint.
Mm-hmm.
Another place is if you're very limited in water. So this is something that's very much been in the news right now. But hydroponics and container farming specifically is extremely water efficient because our environmental system recycles most of the water back to the irrigation. So, we talk about 1,000 heads of lettuce a week. To pull that out of the farm, you're going to spend about 3 gallons of water per day that will just end up in lettuce carried out of the farm. The whole farm altogether will use about 5 to 10 gallons of water per day. So, net of the 3, you're only actually using 2 to 7 gallons of water per day, which is a huge advantage in a lot of places. And unfortunately, the number of places where that's a huge advantage is growing. So that's one sort of customer base that we see.
Mm-hmm.
Another is if you have very short growing seasons, either because of light or temperature. So for instance, we have customers in the far north, in Sweden, Alaska, in Canada, who just have very short growing seasons and no other way to get fresh food.
Right.
I think one really interesting thing is that food deserts aren't just an urban phenomena,
mm-hmm.
right? You can easily end up with a food desert on an island, even if that island has plenty of sun. They probably don't have space, for instance.
Sure, or a remote community in the West is another example of that.
Of course, absolutely.
Now, in the midst of this mega drought that we're facing, the idea of growing 1,000 heads of lettuce a day with maybe 5 to 10 gallons of water per day, lettuce per week, heads and gallons per day, that's a phenomenally efficient system. Do you need phase-free power in order to run this thing? Do you have to have access to 220 rather than the regular voltage in the house?
So you don't need 3-phase, but you do need 240 or 3-phase. So
okay.
Most houses do have split phase 240. So for instance, I'm in my basement right now because of COVID, of course, and my dryer behind me, we just have a standard house connection. My dryer is running on split phase 240. So it's a pretty standard connection.
Okay.
You do need a substantial amount of electricity though.
Mm-hmm.
So the farm uses, depending on what you're growing and how you're growing it, 140 to 220 kilowatt hours of power per day, which is quite substantial. And we have multiple ways to hook that up to the grid, of course, and it is compatible with off-grid installation as well. One thing
so you could set up a solar array and support this.
Of course, yes, and we do have farmers who do that.
Okay, so and that amount of electricity is tangible in terms of carbon footprint if you're using fossil fuels to power the system. So that's something that people should keep in mind.
Absolutely. It's hugely important, actually. Yeah, so one of the things we did about a year ago, we did a full life cycle analysis of our system. And specifically, we did the analysis based on the per head of lettuce that actually comes out of our system relative to traditional agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
Because, the carbon footprint is something that we very much value and are trying to reduce. And what we found was, in our analysis, we had about a half pound of CO2 per head of conventional lettuce. And that is largely spread between transport and groundwater usage, because traditional lettuce will take substantially more groundwater. There are pumps and wells to get that water out and to the field. If you
lose a lot of evaporation. Yeah.
Yep. If you power your freight farm with solar, and this number is even better with wind, it's about a 1/4 pound of CO2 per head of lettuce. So about half of traditional. And I think it's about 1/3 of traditional if you use wind. And one of the things we built out of that research was a partnership with a company called Arcadia, that I'm sure you're familiar with, to actually provide an option for renewable power for any of our US-based farmers.
Right, through a carbon credit system, so that even if you don't have local power, Arcadia helps you translate it into using sustainable power elsewhere. So
they do a mix of community solar and RECs. Yeah.
Right. Now, the system does the automation system help you time the crop so that you could schedule 1,000 heads to come to harvest weekly? That's an interesting question in terms of keeping it going year round.
Yes, it does. So we're actually just releasing a feature next month that is designed specifically to help farmers do this, because you're right, it's a huge challenge, and it's not something that we have in the field yet today. But it's something that we definitely identified as a problem and are about to release. Right now, farmers often use big Excel spreadsheets or lots of sticky notes or various tools like that to make sure that they are coordinating all of those plants at once, because it's a challenge.
Now, do you find that these are purchased and put into place by people who want to create a job for themselves, or are there also communities trying to solve problems like creating jobs and providing food within a food desert?
Our customers are all over the map, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
We have many customers who are what we call small business farmers, who are entrepreneurs who are trying to start a business. Many of those entrepreneurs do come at it from an angle of wanting to provide food for their local community. We also have grocery customers, right? Just traditional grocery, trying to build resiliency in their own supply chain. And we have many other customers who are nonprofits. We have farms and boys and girls clubs. There's a really cool group called CAS Housing that is providing jobs for people with disabilities, adults with disabilities. And yeah, we have farms at women's shelters. It's all over the map, honestly. And people have many different motivations for getting into it.
One of the concepts that I was thinking about as I was reading about this is, you could get a group of families together who were, in addition to providing some local food, feeding themselves consistently. Do you find that, or do you think about how you could create sort of collectively owned versions of the freight farm and provide a financing system that would help create that collaboration within the local community?
I love that idea. It's not honestly something that we've seen all that much, but I love the idea, and I think it's something that resonates a lot with our mission. The interesting thing would be, even with 10 families, say 1,000 heads of lettuce a week is substantially more than 10 families are gonna consume. So I think you have to find a way to actually run that business together or have
Sure.
shares. A lot of our farmers have CSAs, and which can look sort of similar to that, where you have a guaranteed local customer. I want to comment on financing really quickly, because that's something that we think about a ton. Many of our customers, financing is actually a big barrier. And so this is something we work on quite a bit with them, everything from, business planning to finding financing partners. And we've gone to bat for our customers, trying to defend their agricultural loans in court, things like that.
Really?
Yeah, but we're always trying to get financing for our customers and make sure the technology can be deployed for them.
So when you say agricultural financing, does that have different criteria because of the fact that it's for a farm rather than, because you don't think of it as a farm, it's a container, right? So what you're saying is that there are special programs that may be available, whether it's state or federal, that could help support this as well?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, the USDA loans were in the news recently as well, because Biden passed some legislation related to that. But there are agricultural loan programs that folks can leverage. And the reason we end up defending our farmers sometimes in those types of programs is because the USDA doesn't necessarily consider the freight farm a farm traditionally either. So
Right.
going to them and explaining how the technology actually works and what you can grow has been pretty impactful in some cases.
So what you're saying is we really need to rethink the definition of a farm in order to support a wider range of financial options for people who want to put this into practice.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what is the average uh, payout time in terms of, how long does it take in general? And I know this is a highly variable answer, for the farm to break even.
It's a great question. So we generally see people break even around 2 to 3 years after starting their business. And that depends a lot on how aggressively they grow, how determined they are from an operational and sales standpoint. It's surprisingly hard to run a business selling that much produce. I think a lot of people come into it expecting the farm part to be hard. And in many cases, the business part is actually pretty challenging as well. And so what we do see is that our farmers who do the best are ones who come in with an idea of who their customer is going to be, whether that is grocery, restaurant, their local community, a food bank, right? It can look like many different things, but people who come in with a really clear idea of who they're selling to definitely have the best break-even metrics.
And what do you find is the best way to identify those customers? So let's say, for instance, I was considering doing this, and should I be thinking about going to local restaurateurs to say, I'll have fresh produce every day? Is that the right way to identify a customer set, for instance, or to go to a nonprofit that would be interested in acquiring the food for distribution in the community? What works is really the question.
It's going to depend on where you are and what you want to grow. But generally, yes, I would say just getting out there, talking to people, seeing what they need. Often when you talk to chefs, especially like restaurateurs, they will have very specific ideas of what they need. And in some cases, they can't get it elsewhere.
Right.
Those are really good customers because, hey, let's say we're on an island and the lettuce boat comes once a week or once every 2 weeks. That makes it very hard to provide a good dining experience that is vegetable based. And so identifying those types of customers is really powerful. Generally upfront, you want to find more customers than you will eventually need.
Sure.
And then, you get your farm, and your first grow or two will be sampling grows. So you'll try just a bunch of different crops, see what's working for you, seeing what people are excited about, and then scaling up with those crops to make your farm really start singing.
Now, if I'm a small grocer, let's say, are they using Freight Farm to produce the produce that they're offering in store, and do they need to think when they're doing so about the variety and timing of the product as part of the planning of the business? Because I think you're absolutely right. Everybody probably does think the farming's the hard part, but actually making money farming is what farmers will tell you is hard too.
Definitely, yeah. So we have a few different models of interaction with grocery. We have farmers who have grocery customers. So in that case, the farmer will work with their local grocer or even bigger chains to be a supplier to that grocery store. Generally, it's not 100% of the farm's output, but it's a really good way for our farmers to diversify and have a variety of customers. So you'd have a really steady customer, grocery customer that's maybe lower margin, and then you'd also run a CSA that might be a little higher margin for you because there's different structure there.
But do you find that grocers themselves you mentioned this in terms of solidifying their supply chain? Is that something that happens primarily in places where it's hard to grow, like in the far north, or is that something that you see deployed everywhere?
That is something. So yes, the second model is groceries running it themselves, and that is something we have primarily seen in the far north thus far. But I think in some ways it's interesting, right? We're a little bit pessimistic about the climate right now, and I think it's easy to be with all the current news. It's very unfortunate in some ways, but I think that that's something that we're going to see in many more places.
So what is your advice for somebody listening right now, how to get started understanding what you could do with a Freight Farms farm? Where should our listeners begin?
Definitely. So our website is a great resource. So please check that out. And one of the things that's been, I think COVID challenged us with is we previously did a ton of in-person events. And those were very effective ways to teach people about farming and hydroponics and what we do. And COVID pushed us to do those all online. And that's actually been really, really awesome for us, because what we see is that no longer do you have to be local or we have to come to you to have an event where you can attend. We have events at least once a month, sometimes with current farmers, sometimes they're tech talks, sometimes it's just about hydroponics. Those are all listed on our website, and I would highly recommend someone
Great.
check those out. We also have recordings of our previous events. So those are also available.
So you can go to freightfarms.com and learn about it and make some choices, and then start to investigate the actual acquisition of the system. You don't have to go in blind. That's great to know.
Oh no, yeah, definitely don't go in blind. If your interest is piqued, then give us a call and we'll help work through with what your business plan could look like, and what financing could look like, and all the things you need to know to get started.
Well, Jake, this is fascinating. I want to thank you for taking some time to tell us about it today.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
We've been talking with Jake Felser. He's the Chief Technology Officer at Boston-based Freight Farms. You can find them at freightfarms.com. And as he said, check out all of the information about how to do container farming. If you're interested in thinking about launching your own farm, taking care of your own family or your neighborhood's food, that is a fascinating resource. I spent about 2 hours there before we did this interview, and I recommend you take your time too. Folks, this is Earth911, Sustainability in Your Ear. I would really appreciate it if you'd share this podcast with your friends. Tell your friends on social media about it. We want to spread the word about the ideas that we're sharing here. We appreciate your help. In the meantime, take care of yourselves, take care of one another, and let's all take care of this beautiful planet of ours. We'll be back soon. Take care.